I asked if there was a nitrogen cycle modeling video, and it wasn't. We did go over this slide in class, but let me explain through it, and then maybe we can see if we can throw together a model on the next slide. Okay, so when we explained it in class, of course, there's no starting point, there's no ending point, but one of the largest pools of nitrogen is atmospheric nitrogen gas. That would be the N2, okay? That's this guy right here, okay? 78% of the air of the atmosphere is nitrogen gas, and because it's a gas, we actually don't know, our bodies are unable to use it until it's converted into a different form. So one way for that to happen is for it to be taken up by nitrogen-fixing plants, and it's not actually the plants that are converting in, or it's not plants that are doing the nitrogen fixing, but actually the bacteria inside the roots. Now, this particular group of plants that is able to do this, to form this symbiosis with nitrogen fixing bacteria, is known as legumes. Let's change this color to legumes are beans, peas, and clover. So if you plant beans, peas, or clover, those bacteria in the root nodules are able to take nitrogen gas from the atmosphere and convert it into ammonium within the roots. It's really cool. Okay, there are also nitrogen-fixing soil bacteria, okay, right here. These guys are not associated with plants, but they live in the soil and they do the same thing. They fix nitrogen. Apparently they don't need a plant host, so for them. But both of these organisms will turn nitrogen gas into ammonia. Okay, that is NH4. You don't really have to remember this, but it might help you, since we talked about elements and molecules, to know that nitrogen gas is N2 and ammonium is the nitrogen split up and combined with some hydrogen ions, or hydrogen elements, okay, to make the ammonium ion. This ammonium can be changed or converted into nitrites, and this is where some of those hydrogens are removed and oxygens are kind of plopped on instead. Nitrites, the bacteria that are responsible for that are called nitrifying bacteria. The process is called nitrification. When nitrites are turned into nitrates, just adding one more oxygen, right? Notice that? With NO2, now we have NO3. This is apparently the preferred form of nitrogen that plants really like to take up. So, that process is done by also nitrifying bacteria, and when those nitrates end up being taken up by the plant, this is called assimilation, right? When we eat things and reorganize the elements and molecules within our bodies, we call that assimilation. Plants do the same thing. Okay, there are also some bacteria called denitrifying bacteria. They perform the process of denitrification, and that takes these nitrates, right, the usable form of nitrogen that can be used by plants, and they return that to nitrogen gas. And that replenishes the atmosphere with nitrogen gas, and the percentage remains at 78%, roughly. Okay. Now, once it's taken up by plants, this is made into proteins, right? Plants need proteins. They also need nucleic acids. Both of those macromolecules require nitrogen, if you remember from our first few lessons. Okay, so when the plants take up the nitrates, that nitrogen is converted and used to make proteins, nucleic acids. The rabbit will assimilate the plants and use the nitrogen to make the rabbit's proteins and nucleic acids, right? Now, when both of these organisms, the plants and the rabbits, when they die, because they are living organisms, at some point they will die, and their proteins and nucleic acids and any other nitrogen that they've taken in is going to be released back into the soil by these decomposers. The decomposers are bacteria, these are fungi, some of them are aerobic, which means they require oxygen. Some of them are anaerobic, which means they can function without oxygen. Also pretty cool. But that form of nitrogen is basically ammonium. This is a cleaning product. I don't know if you've ever smelled ammonia. It kind of smells like a very strong urine. It almost kind of stings your nose. If you ever walk by roadkill that's decaying or decomposing, what you're smelling is probably the decomposers releasing this ammonia. Okay? It'll take a close whiff, but that's some fun connection there. So that's kind of the overall view of the nitrogen cycle. I don't know that I could draw it a whole lot better. So this would be a really good place to start. Just know that there are several different pools of nitrogen. Maybe we should try it anyway. If I were asked to model the nitrogen cycle on paper, first of all, I'd change it to not yellow. Let's do that. Okay. So I would start by showing the biggest pool, right, which is nitrogen gas. Uh-oh. Not mean to do that. Alright, fun times with technology. This is why you might want to stop with the previous slide here. Okay. Oh, that's all I need. Alright, so we have the nitrogen gas in the atmosphere. Okay. How does this get down to the soil? Well, it gets down to the soil through legumes, right, that have nodules in their roots that house the bacteria, convert nitrogen gas into ammonia. Okay. Let's see. So this is kind of complicated. Alright, so nitrogen gas is now ammonium inside the plants. Okay, so the plants can now use, that's like a direct fertilizer factory for the plants, and some eventually leaks out into the soil. This is called nitrogen fixation. I'm thinking probably the previous one is easier to look at. So feel free to stop the video now if you don't want to go on. I will not be offended. When ammonium is turned into a different form, let's say nitrite, okay, this is nitrification, okay. So far, all of the work has been done by our friends, the with the original one because every time I hit escape, I lose my model. So, I'm going to say it's good enough. Alright, happy studying, good luck, it's great.